Have you ever wondered what happens when the gentlest souls finally say, enough? We often think of empaths as fragile, too sensitive, too soft, too easily broken. Narcissists, on the other hand, are seen as powerful manipulators who bend others to their will. But Carl Jung uncovered something profoundly unsettling for every narcissist. When an empath reaches their breaking point, they don't shatter, they transform. And that transformation is more dangerous than any weapon a manipulator has ever used. Because the truth is this: a fed-up empath isn't cruel, vengeful, or destructive. There's something far scarier to those who thrive on control. They're untouchable. In this article, we'll dive into Jung's insights on why a fed-up empath is more formidable than a narcissist ever imagined, how shadow integration changes the entire dynamic, and how this awakening not only heals individuals, but transforms human relationships at their core, the breaking point that creates strength. Carl Jung observed that empaths, the people who carry others' pain, who give without question, who absorb shadows no one else wants to face, eventually reach a limit. But instead of collapsing under the weight, they undergo what Jung described as an alchemical moment. It's as if years of absorbed poison suddenly transform into psychological gold. This isn't weakness disguised as kindness anymore. It's power forged through suffering. The empath stops being a passive vessel for others' darkness and becomes an active force of light. And here's the twist narcissists dread. The fed-up empath doesn't fight back on the narcissist's battlefield. They transcend it. They no longer play the game, and without their participation, the game collapses. Gentleness was never weakness. Modern psychology often mislabels sensitivity as fragility, but Jung saw it differently. To him, the empath's gentleness was never a weakness. It was strength waiting for the right moment to emerge. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." For empaths, self-acceptance means embracing not only their compassion, but also the darker aspects they've been taught to deny: anger, boundaries, self-protection. This is what Jung called shadow integration. The empath who once embodied the archetype of the wounded healer evolves into what we might call the sovereign healer. Instead of healing through sacrifice, they heal from strength. Instead of absorbing endless pain, they consciously choose when and how to give. It's not a gentle awakening. It's a fierce transformation through what Jung described as enantiodromia, the principle that everything eventually turns into its opposite. The endless giver becomes the conscious chooser. The perpetual absorber becomes the strategic reflector. The hidden power of empaths. Science is beginning to catch up to what Jung intuited decades ago. Neuroscientific studies, such as those by Dr. Judith Orloff, show that empaths' brains are wired differently, with hyperactive mirror neurons and heightened activity in emotional processing regions. This wiring, while making them vulnerable to manipulation, also makes them extraordinarily powerful once they learn to direct it consciously. Empaths don't lose their sensitivity when they awaken. Instead, it becomes precise, almost surgical. They develop the ability to sense lies before words are spoken, to detect manipulation in micro-expressions, to see through emotional disguises. Jung referred to this as a form of active imagination, perceiving the deeper psychological realities that most people overlook. This is why narcissists fear them, because once awakened, empaths become truth detectors. No charm, no guilt, no gaslighting can hide behind their vision. The 3 stages of empath transformation. Jung's observations reveal a clear process in the awakening of empaths. 1. Recognition. The veil lifts. Empaths suddenly see the toxic patterns they've endured, absorbing blame, apologizing for others' behavior, and giving endlessly while receiving crumbs. Consciousness replaces illusion. 2. Integration. Instead of rejecting their sensitivity, they weaponize it. They use their deep awareness not to please or absorb, but to see through deception before it takes hold. 3. Sovereignty. The empath no longer needs external validation. They become whole within themselves, individuated and free from the need to complete anyone else. At this stage, they embody what Jung called the individuated self, Psychologically whole, self-directed, and immune to manipulation. Case studies. When empaths stop playing the game. Jung's theory isn't just abstract, it plays out in real lives. Consider these examples. The workplace predator, Sarah's story. For years, Sarah's colleagues stole credit for her work and gaslit her into questioning her competence. She carried the tension, absorbing blame silently. But once she embraced shadow work, Sarah stopped explaining herself and withdrew from the manipulative dance. With no emotional labor to feed on, her colleague's mask slipped. Others noticed, and his power evaporated. The family manipulator, Michael's story. Michael's mother used guilt and emotional blackmail to control him. He spent years regulating her moods at the expense of his own life. When he stopped engaging in the drama, set boundaries, and refused to play rescuer, her manipulation lost its hold. She was forced to either adapt or seek new victims. Michael had become manipulation-proof. The romantic vampire, Lisa's story. Lisa's partner thrived on criticism and control, making her feel unworthy. Through Jung's lens of projection, she realized the insults weren't hers to carry. They were reflections of her partner's self-hatred. She stopped defending, stopped explaining, and the relationship collapsed almost overnight. Without her unconscious participation, the illusion of superiority had no foundation. In all three stories, the empaths didn't become cruel. They simply became conscious. And consciousness, Jung knew, is the greatest threat to unconscious manipulation. The empathic paradox. Here lies the paradox. The more an empath integrates their shadow, the more compassionate they become, but with discernment. Their compassion is no longer naive, no longer a vulnerability to be exploited. This mature compassion terrifies narcissists and manipulators because it cannot be controlled. The awakened empath loves fiercely, but with boundaries. They give generously, but selectively. They embody what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to unite opposites into a higher wisdom. Weakness becomes strength. Sensitivity becomes power. Jung's framework for empaths. Jung offered practical steps for this transformation, tools that any empath can apply. 1. Recognize the pattern. Make unconscious dynamics conscious. Document interactions that drain you. Notice who consistently takes more than they give, and see how you justify staying in toxic cycles. 2. Integrate the shadow. Reclaim suppressed qualities, anger, selfishness, boundaries. These aren't evils. They're unlived life. Say no without guilt. Feel anger without self-erasure. Choose yourself without apology. 3. Stop the energy leak. Psychological energy is finite. Stop wasting it on those who misuse it. Don't over-explain, justify, or convince people committed to misunderstanding you. Perform regular energy audits to assess who nourishes you and who drains you. 4. Embody authentic power. Individuation means becoming who you truly are, not who others want you to be. Authentic power isn't dominance. It's sovereignty over yourself, choosing responses instead of reacting unconsciously. The wider impact, an empathic revolution. Jung believed that individual transformation has collective consequences. When one empath awakens, they create what he called permission waves, ripples that inspire others to break free from unconscious patterns. The awakened empath challenges not only narcissists, but entire family systems, workplaces, and cultural dynamics built on exploitation. Their very presence forces others to confront their own shadows. This is why entire systems fear the awakened empath, not just the narcissist. They represent a model of relating that makes unconscious manipulation unacceptable. The 3 levels of empathic development. Jung outlined 3 levels that determine an empath's vulnerability to manipulation. 1. Unconscious empath. Feels everything but understands nothing. Absorbs others' emotions blindly. 2. Awakening empath. Begins to recognize patterns and apply shadow work. Develops conscious empathy. 3. Sovereign empath. Fully integrated. Feels deeply but chooses wisely. Offers compassion without sacrificing themselves. The journey from level 1 to level 3 requires courage. the courage to see one's own complicity in toxic patterns, not for blame, but for empowerment. Conscious compassion versus revenge. Jung warned of a dangerous trap. When empaths awaken, they may be tempted to use their newfound power to hurt those who hurt them. But revenge is still a chain, keeping them tied to the manipulative dynamic. True awakening expresses itself as conscious compassion, loving without enabling, protecting without cruelty, seeing clearly without harsh judgment. This balance is what makes the fed-up empath not just free, but wise. Why narcissists fear the fed-up empath? At the heart of Jung's insight is this: the danger was never that empaths would become cruel. The real danger is that they would become conscious. A conscious empath cannot be controlled. They no longer participate in toxic games, no longer carry projections, no longer feed the manipulative system with their energy. Their withdrawal collapses the narcissist's power structure. Narcissists fear this because their survival depends on unconscious participation. Once the empath awakens, that fuel source disappears forever. Conclusion: the sovereign empath. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." For empaths, that privilege means embracing both sensitivity and strength, compassion and discernment, the ability to love and the right to be loved authentically. Your sensitivity was never too much. It was your superpower. Your empathy was never weakness. It was higher perception. And your breaking point was never the end. It was the beginning of your sovereignty. The narcissist's greatest fear is not your anger, it's your awakening. Because once you become conscious, you are no longer their victim. You are their end.